Welcome to the Mere Mortals Mountain Biking Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Badeau. In this episode, I'm sitting down with Todd Sadow to talk about the Whiskey Off-Road. It's a mountain bike race that he started 22 years ago, and it has since grown into one of the most legendary events in cycling. Each year draws over 2,000 riders, including amateurs who are trying to race for the first time, all the way up to the fastest pros from around the world, and thousands of spectators cheering everyone on. Todd shares how his very appropriately named Epic Rides team purposely creates a 3-day weekend experience that is centered around us mere mortals. We also go way beyond the race course in our discussion and talk about several of the free activities like a community concert, a bike expo with some of the biggest brands in the cycling industry, and a kids ride where the future of mountain biking gets to pedal through the exact same start and finish line as the pros. And beyond the whiskey event, we also talk a lot about how to just simply have more fun on every bike ride. Okay, let's jump right in. I'm here with Todd Sadow, who's the organizer of several amazing races, including the Whiskey Off-Road. And we're going to talk a little bit today about what it's like to participate in that event. So Todd, would you mind giving a brief introduction of yourself?
Sure. First, Scott, thanks for having me on. I appreciate the opportunity. An introduction of myself. My name's Todd Sadow. I am the president and founder of Epic Rides. We organize mountain bike races, founded the company in 2000, co-founded our first event, the 24 Hours in the Old Pueblo. And since then, we've launched a variety of events, 25 years deep into this party called Epic Rides. So we have the 24 Hours in the Old Pueblo, the Whiskey Off-Road, and the Tour of the White Mountains currently. Not currently promoting or producing. We've also had the Soul Ride, which was a 100-mile race way back in the day in the early 2000s. And also we had scaled the Whiskey Off-Road model with the Epic Ride series. And that included the Grand Junction Off-Road in Colorado, the Carson City Off-Road in Nevada, and the Oz Trails Off-Road in Bentonville, Arkansas.
Awesome. So the whiskey race happens to be one of the reasons that attracted me to move to Prescott, Arizona. And so I want to spread the word to other, amateur riders, because I currently do a little bit of racing, but had never even thought about it prior to that. So maybe can you talk us through a little bit about, what the race looks like from an amateur perspective? Because I know you have both amateurs and pros, a little bit about the course, that sort of thing to start off.
The Whiskey Off-Road event weekend from the amateur's perspective is, for the beginner, it's probably a little daunting. Signing up for something like the 15, the 25, or the 50 proof takes a bit of a leap of faith. So it typically, arrives to someone's mountain biking life once they feel like they have become proficient on the bike and want to test their skills at a start line, or they have some really persuasive friends that convince them this is something they need in their life. But what comes from that commitment is phenomenal. It's an over-the-top journey to a start line and a finish line. And, most of what comes from signing up for certainly an Epic Rides event, and hopefully any mountain bike event that someone could sign up for is just a life change. It's like shifting into a new gear or an extra gear that you have to lean on from time to time that will spice up your life. It'll give you extra motivation. It gives you a goal, a very clear goal down the road that you can start making life decisions based on that. You've got a carrot out there. Hey, I'm going to go ride one more time this week, or I'm going to eat a little healthier, or I'm not. I'm going to drink an extra beer because I rode an extra time this week. I'm going to eat more tacos tomorrow night because I'm going to ride tomorrow evening with my buddies. Like it can go every which way. And that's what's beautiful about it. The thing you don't expect is showing up to a trailhead, going to ride solo on a Thursday morning before work because you have a little extra motivation and you meet people that were also out there riding solo, and it creates new relationships. There's so many unexpected things that can come from signing up for hopefully any cycling event, but hopefully all Epic Rides mountain bike events that we want for people that have very little presence between the start and the finish line tape, right? But lead to big things. So that said, once you've gotten over the hump of signing up for the event, look, when people arrive to Prescott, we want them to be submerged in mountain bike culture. We don't want them to care about getting first. We know that everyone will have this fleeting moment the night before the start where they go, maybe I will be faster tomorrow. And usually somewhere halfway up Copper Basin, they're like, no, actually, I'm just still me, you know? But that's
That
okay.
also sounds familiar.
Yeah, we all do that, right? We're at this moment, we're like, I might win. And it's like, wait a second, no, I'm not going to win today. But it's like all those things that we want for people. I guess most importantly, we want for people to have just a total immersive mountain bike cultural experience where when they finish their ride, because they're not easy, even the 15 that we call a fun ride, which is like a joke internally, because it's so not. I mean, it's fun, but it's like so hard. It's not like it's not the kids' ride. But yeah, we want people to be able to say they're a bona fide mountain biker when they go back to work on Monday, or when they get home to their spouse and, you know, kids or whoever it might be, or talking to their siblings, like, you know, how was it? They can confidently say, like, I finished the 15. Heck, it was 19, right?
Yeah.
Or the 25 was gnarly. It started with like a couple 1,000-feet climb. Like it was, it really tested me, or the 50, the person that maybe has been riding a long time or just wants to bite off something really big. Look, they're going to finish that and they're going to know that they're capable of doing a lot. They dug a little deeper in the well than they're accustomed to, and it led to good things.
That's fantastic. So the whiskey happened to have been the second race I ever did. And I agree with you that all races are hopefully a fun experience for people. But, the first race I ever did, I showed up and almost everybody was in kind of a skin suit with much better athleticism and biking equipment and et cetera for me. And I think everybody there was supportive of the slower folks like myself, but nothing like the events that you put on where you truly are amongst peers, and there's a lot of people maybe in front of me that I'm learning from, and a lot of people in back of me that are just having just as much fun. And so one of the reasons why I wanted to focus this event in particular is because despite those challenges, which I've heard you describe as something that is challenging to your physical and mental capabilities, but something that can be finished, and sort of keeps the rider on cloud nine for the next couple of weeks because it was such a challenge. And I really love the positivity amongst the entire event. So talking about that starting line, maybe walk me through how many total participants are there, in each of the categories, that sort of thing, so people understand the friends that they get to ride with during this event.
Yeah. So no matter the distance, they're all levels of mountain bikers sign up for each one. The 15 has lots of beginners, has lots of youth. It has lots of distinguished athletes that, are using it as, a goal to stay fit as they get older in life. I think the 15 proof typically is around 400 riders. I'm going to be rough on these numbers. They're kind of off the top of my head. I don't have a reference in front of me, but the 25 proof is the bell curve of the whole event. That tends to be up around 1,000 registered riders. And the 50 is usually, I think, around 700-800. Well, it must be probably around 600-700. Cause we tend to be just over 2,000 riders registered. And then the pro category is, somewhere between, call it, 80 and 120 registered, depending on the year. The pro category is very different. Whereas the 15, the 25 and 50 proof amateurs, it's a major event, goal for those people, and they'll show up without as much question about their fitness, or more of like, I'm doing this either way, right? They might not have the familiarity with like, are my legs at, in their pinnacle moment right now? Whereas the pros, they could sleep poorly the night before and then just not start the race. I mean, it's like, it's an F1 race car, versus like a pickup truck.
The thing that I love about the amateur categories is there's different waves. And so, the faster people can kind of get going down the road. And then even starting in the back, there's plenty of fast people there. There's plenty of slower people. And so it's just really fun to watch that. And so talk a little bit about, I've heard you mention many times that when you started this company of yours, the story that I've heard you tell is that the data and the surveys and so forth that you sent back started to favor sort of the more experienced rider. And I really admired how you and the team wanted to attract, more of the people who have been sort of in that riding for only 1 year or so group. And so maybe walk me through how you were able to attract that demographic. 'Cause I think you guys have done a fantastic job, more so than I see with other races. And that's, the type of people I'm hoping to motivate to sign up here. But yeah, how do you find them? What's, special for them with that experience? And what can you say to take down the intimidation factor any on that registration?
Well, so Richard Cunningham, he's the founder. He's one of the OGs of mountain biking. Founded a bike company called Mantis, had an elevated chainstay. That was kind of their claim to fame. He's a Mountain Bike Hall of Fame member. Was for a very, 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 very long time, just retired in the last couple of years, a journalist in the industry for much of that time at Mountain Bike Action. And then in the recent years before he retired, he was at Pink Bike, and mostly a tech-oriented journalist. So, an engineering, analytical mind. As a journalist, I remember he came out and rode in the 24 hours in the Old Pueblo. And then his write-up afterwards basically accused us of throwing parties that happen to have a mountain bike event nearby. And I, as one of the most flattering, editorial pieces ever for Epic Rides. And I think because it really recognized how much we want to celebrate second through last place. Only one person can get first. And that person oftentimes is accustomed to getting first. But second through last was brave. They signed up, they showed up, they finished it. And that's where I've lived my life. Like I've, not always been on I think I've won one mountain bike race my whole life, right? To your point, we've gone to great lengths to make sure that people feel welcomed. All levels of mountain biker can show up and have success. And I think that's key to creating a successful mountain bike event that a whole community can rally around and make their own. Something that they want to come back to year after year. Whether it's the whiskey where someone might show up for their first year into the 15 and then graduate up to the 50. The 24 hours in the Old Pueblo, people might show up and ride on like a 5-person the first year, or a corporate team, which is 6 to 10 people. And then these events and the participation can have a life cycle to it that can go forever. You've got the person that did the 15, that did the 25, they became a over the top enthusiast, and then goes out and does the 50. They might, that might have been a 5-year window of their life. But then in the 6th year, they got married. In the 7th or 8th year, they had started a family. And now all of a sudden, they're doing the 15 or the 25 because it's approachable for them. And then all of a sudden, they're doing the 15 with their children. Or, watching their children graduate through the 25 and the 50. Or at the 24, they sign up as a 5-person and then come back and do it every which way possible. Duo, 4-person, solo, right? These events, we've always wanted them to be able to have a lasting place in people's lives. And I think that by creating an experience that is approachable by almost anyone, you can't buy a bike yesterday and show up at the start line and expect to do well, right? You can do it, maybe, if you're athletic. But for people that are curious about mountain biking and have some miles under their belt, they can show up and reliably have an over-the-top mountain bike experience that can lead to a lot more down the line as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've personally experienced a lot of that narrative myself. So when I first moved to Prescott, I was very excited about the event, but I was pretty busy, right? Still settling in. And so I kind of checked out the weekend as a spectator, did some volunteering, and that's sort of how I got weaved into the 24 hours in the Old Pueblo as well. I came down to support a cousin of mine and had a pretty darn good time, even though I wasn't racing. And now that I've done it for a couple of years, I'm thinking about maybe going back to that every so often, right? To just enjoy the party. I specifically enjoy just doing as many kicker laps as desired without having to go out on the other 16. The other thing that I've really enjoyed seeing some of the youth that I coach who've participated in the event is simply to improve their position as compared to last year, right? Talk about, second through last. I mean, many of us are much closer to last place than second place, but it's so rewarding to do sort of a repeat of the event and see if some of those skills and fitness that we've been working on causes that improvement. So speaking of repeat rides, do you happen to know off the top of your head just a rough order of magnitude of the percentage of repeat registrations that you normally see from people?
Yeah. I mean, down to the 10th. Look, we're really lucky We survey after our events. We get really high rate, reviews from our attendees, which is important to us, obviously. Our events tend to be over 40% retention year to year. Now, if you zoom out a little bit, if you go to like a 10-year retention, we're over 80%. Yeah.
And do you find a lot of people bringing their friends, kind of telling others about it and looping them in?
Yeah, exactly. While social media is great, and I say that with total skepticism, the best marketing will always ever be word of mouth. And I think that's been our most potent and strongest play, since 2000 when, a newsletter was progressive, right? Yeah. Yeah. So lots of our participation comes from word of mouth and friends recruiting friends. And that's played a big role.
Yeah. We had a coach on the middle school team that I run, Aaron Osborne, I think it was third or fourth in the pro category. And so we invited her in to talk a little bit with the students about that. And you can kind of see the gears moving in their head, like, hold on, these are the trails that we ride at practice, right? Yeah. Let's start, sort of taking one segment at a time, and they're sort of training up. And then it started with a few of I think it was the 8th graders who sort of graduated high school. And then they started talking with the younger students. And now we've got as young as 6th grade on the team doing both the 15 and the 20. And then some of their younger siblings are doing the 15 as well. And so it's been really fun to see that, sort of social marketing happen here locally as well. So speaking of the course, you kind of went through at a high level, but maybe let's start with what the challenging parts are. I heard you say, and I still laugh about this, that your team broker's suffering. And I think that only somebody who's done the race can really understand it. But talk me through a little bit about maybe starting with the 15 proof. So it starts downtown, heads out to the backcountry. What's sort of the first challenge there with the road climb and that sort of thing? And then maybe work through to some of the technical features and that sort of thing.
Sure. So, the 15, all the events use the same egress from downtown. Start and finish on Whiskey Road, the crosswalk. Head west through the historic neighborhood just outside of downtown, over to Copper Basin Road, up Copper Basin Road, into the forest.
Sorry to interrupt, but that also happens to be the exact same path that the pros take as well, right?
Correct. Yeah. That's an important piece, is for the amateurs to ride the same trails as the pros. Even the 15 shares the same trails. And so someone who's curious about the sport can show up and do the 15, and the pros will race the backcountry course on Sunday, a different day, and they can see their times and how they compare on Strava.
Yeah.
And it's cool.
I had a 7th grader talking with one of your pros about how tough that Copper Basin Road climb was. It was awesome.
That must have been a fun conversation to witness. A little history, kind of a fun, like a proud moment, I guess. The first year that I got a permit for this event, which in itself during those days was not an easy thing to do with Forest Service, BLM, state lands. Like, mountain biking was the new kid on the block. There were not a lot of people internally in these agencies that understood us. They saw us as not a favorable user user group. I'll never forget, I went and actually ran to this permitting guy this last year at the event, and we had some great laughs about all this. So I went to get the permit, and I had permitted other events on Forest Service land. I knew the protocols. I went to get the permit, and he said, "Hey, you got to pay me." And this is like the day before the event, which these days we don't operate that way anymore. We won't take a permit the day before. But anyways, he said, "You got to pay me." And I was like, "Well, we audit the event and then we pay you afterwards." And he said, "No, I don't trust you." So, I mean, here I am. I took out my personal checkbook, right? And I wrote a check and I, paid him and said, I'll see you afterwards, And the event went great. We had a really good first year. We had filled up at 200 riders before the event. And it was evident that people had a really good time and enjoyed the riding. And that turn off of the Sierra Prieta Overlook, where you do a 180 from looking out over the overlook and you get on the single track that climbs up. And these days it's still steep, but it's an obvious trail. We were connecting to a non-system trail, and we were doing it by just going through that gully straight up the hill. Mm-hmm. And I remember talking to him going into year 2, and he said, "Hey, I noticed you guys were using that trail. It wasn't a system trail. I want you to know that this last year we made it a system trail for you guys.
Awesome.
And that was the first time in the history of Epic Rides, that'd be 2005 at that point, that an agency did something nice 5 years in. And he was like, you didn't ask for it, but I noticed it and you guys were good. So we made it a system trail.
Yeah,
and it was
awesome.
like, yeah, all of a sudden, it clicked and there was like a relationship that had started and it felt great, We're 20 years in on this event. I try to pre-ride it most years. Obviously, it doesn't happen every year. But without fail, I get to that pavement in Thumb Butte and I count, I take an inventory, bike, body, everything in one piece. And I think, man, like this thing's amazing. This course gives. It takes so much out of you to get to the end, but you get to the end and God, I mean, that descent on pavement all the way down from there into town, it's the most blissful 3.2 miles of pavement descent you can find after that, like you have just done something. It's great.
And I think one of the things that I've really recognized is that a lot of the spectators are from Prescott and they recognize those challenges that you've just been through. And every bike race has people cheering you on, but there's something different about the person who knows the 50-mile course that you just rode, sort of recognizing that versus, grandma and grandpa visiting and always being proud of their grandchild. So one of the things that I love about the course is, it's a single loop and it gets really into the backcountry, right? Versus some of the races are, sort of shorter loops in a county park or something like that. And that's been a huge deal to many of our youth racers who've not typically had the opportunity to go that far off of the road. So I love that aspect of it. I did have one of those students submit a question for me. So right at the top of Sierra Preta on the 25 course, and you end up on that double track, they wanted to know why the sort of slang name for that trail is called Avalanche.
I've never heard that.
Really? Okay. So yeah. I think it depends on how people write it, but
I know go ahead.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
So you're talking about the rowdy descent off of Sierra Preta, that section.
Yeah.
Look, it fully justifies the name Avalanche. Scree slope. It's a scree slope. There's like, on your on days when you know what you're getting into, you can let it rip down that thing. But if you're off, or if you've never seen that thing and you're a timid descender, I mean, it's probably hard to even just stop on it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Every time I ride that thing, whether it's for your race or pre-riding, or I just randomly find myself over there, I get about halfway down it and I make a tradition of yelling out really loud Avalanche, because you can see the rocks kind of coming behind you. And like you say, if on my A game, I'm enjoying that. Or maybe if not, it's a great example of where you can always walk around it, depending on your skill set and that sort of thing. Another common alternate trail name is Cramp Hill. Can you tell everybody how that one earned that well-deserved name?
I mean, obvious reasons, right? Everyone cramps on Cramp Hill. It's even the pros. I think it's because it's late in the day. Your body's low on sodium. I think it's like an intersection of compounding issues. One, it's late in the day and you're low on sodium. Two, I think because you come off of some monster descending and then all of a sudden you've got to engage your climbing muscles again, I think it just forces people to seize. But even the pros on that thing, when we used to run the 50 up it, would seize. I mean, it takes no prisoners. We designed, I don't want to say we, John Shoemaker and Robert Peoples, and there's a third person, I don't know his name. They designed a course, the OG course, that was intended to be an endurance mountain bike course. This thing was the Whiskey Off-Road and Endurance Mountain Bike Event. That was the original title, the byline of the event. And I remember I sent out an email to our database, our newsletter database, back in 2003, because I wanted to add events. We had the 24 Hours in El Pueblo, we had the Soul Ride, and I wanted to create a series of endurance events throughout Arizona. And, in a very windy way, we ended up with the Whiskey Off-Road because Shu and Peoples emailed me back. They'd already ridden in the 24 and maybe even the Soul Ride and said, hey, we got this perfect course in Prescott. And there wasn't a lot of mountain biking in Prescott. There was the Y Camp and the MBAA race there. That might have been it. And there weren't a lot of mountain bikers in Prescott. And me and a buddy went and rode with them, and we rode this 25 route, and it just crushed me. I was like, this is good. But yeah, it's intended. It was designed to force attrition and make people work, right? And to not hand it to them. And a big piece of it was the backcountry element. We wanted to get away from multiple loops. Multiple loops are fun, and there's a time and a place in your life where that makes a lot of sense, or different terrains and different courses, different events. But in this case, we wanted to give people a backcountry experience, and a couple of big climbs and a couple of big descents it's instant gratification, right? You literally can go from for 30 minutes climbing of I hate this and why do I do this and what decision did I make that led me here and who's responsible for this, which is always the self, right? To this is the best sport in the whole world, right? Just bombing down the 260, invigorated beyond measure, a feeling you haven't felt in days, months, or years sometimes, surviving little scree slope after routes to spiny sections to picking good lines and bad lines and surviving those decisions either way and being on top of the world. And that's mountain biking, right? We should only hope that every mountain biker gets that at some point. That's what we wanted to deliver. And so I think that's when we went and rode with Peoples and Shu that day, it was like, this checks the boxes. Whoa, this checks all of them like 10 times. So, yeah, that's the experience we wanted to give. A big piece is the backcountry piece, especially these days. Everyone stays so connected. I couldn't have ever expected it to work this way, right? We didn't have social media in the beginning of this, and we didn't have smartphones, and but these days it's so hard to get away from. It's so hard to be unplugged that to get out in the backcountry, to feel far away, and to be able to be a part of, like, playing a role with nature instead of just trotting upon it, or parking at a parking spot, whatever that looks like these days for everybody. I think that's one of the greatest aspects of the Whiskey Off-Road today, is that you can truly get away, and you're not going to see, the same corner 5 times. You're going to see that corner once unless you pre-ride or get out there during the week, because you live close by.
Yeah. So specific to the 15 proof course, which might be the best spot for somebody to start, I like how, at the end of that challenging road climb, before you transition into the forest and into the single track, there's a wonderful aid station there, at least for the past several years that I've stopped by. It's run by some of the most experienced mountain bikers I know, with full humility for where they started and great advice for those amateurs that are assisting. And I've heard so many times people say, kind of half jokingly, half serious, how do they make the drinks and the bars that they hand out at this aid station taste so much better than, what I normally eat or even what I brought in my backpack? It's just something about that, the way in which it's delivered with such a kind heart and supportive environment. I think it truly does taste better coming from the aid station. So I told all the people I knew to take a stop there. It's worth the 20 seconds you're going to lose on the ride, because it just really re-energizes you before you hit the single track. The other thing that I really try to highlight for people that I'm encouraging to do the race is maybe talk to us a little bit about, it's just a huge crowd at the start and the finish line, but also I don't remember going more than about 10, 15 minutes even out on the backcountry course without seeing another spectator who's ridden or hiked out there to been on location to cheer us on. Talk a little bit about the spectators and the support that they provide to the riders.
Sure, yeah. I think this event, because it's managed to withstand the test of time, it's just so steeped in tradition. There's so many people that have ridden in it and been around it, that whether or not they're riding in it any given year, they like to be a part of it. And that, to your point, it brings out the best volunteers you could ever ask for. I mean, the event will utilize close to 250 volunteers. It could never happen without a monster volunteer base. And the quality of volunteer is because of this long enduring event that, brings the community out and gives them special ways to be a part of it and to grow from it and be together. You're right. Like the aid stations, it's funny to hear it tastes better. They do. Like, we've got great support. We have products from Never Second, which is a great nutrition company and hydration company. And then you've got incredible people, serving up the nutrition and tending to riders as they come in. Right. And those experiences at the aid station are everything from, the fastest coming through and rolling by, grabbing a bottle, going, or maybe just saying hi, thanks, and continuing on to, the mid pack and the tail end of the pack that are just grateful that the volunteers are there. And then to your point, the volunteers are seasoned. They know what these people are going through. They've been in their shoes before. So to share those moments is special, and it just enriches the experience. That's something you can't just create that overnight. It's something that's part of the Whiskey Off-Road because it's the Whiskey Off-Road, because it's Prescott. And it's they've been together for so long.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense in hindsight. I was just so impressed with so many of the volunteers. I literally recruited some of the people like Bob to coach our team because I saw how amazing of a job he and his wife and their friends did at that aid station. So speaking of one of the people that rode in the event and sort of transitioned up through the different categories. Unfortunately, we had a youth here that was killed fairly recently by an automobile accident, and you dedicated this year's race to him. Maybe talk to us a little bit about how that dedication tradition started. I've been really touched learning about the people that you dedicate it to. And so I'll just mention that while I wasn't Gabriel's coach, he's very well known in the area. And I think last year he did the 25 proof, which is more like 27, 28 miles, 2,200 feet of climbing, I think. He did that at the age of 14. And then I think he placed 140th out of 1,000 riders, again, at the age of 14. And, it was just really touching for the community to receive that dedication. So maybe tell the story of how that tradition started and why you do that.
Well, I'm going to start by talking about Gabe and honoring him. So, Gabe was tragically struck by a car on his bike and passed away last fall. And we honored him. We don't typically honor people that have passed, but he was obviously a shining star that had taken to mountain biking and was getting what we always hope people will get from the sport. And his life was taken too early, and we wanted to honor him and shine some light on who he was, because he didn't get the chance to probably get that light shined on him later in life, because undoubtedly he was going places. We started the dedicating events to people on the premise that we want, there's two things. Mountain biking is still a relatively young sport. Really found its first wave in the 80s. And there's it keeps progressing, and there's lots of innovation. There's lots of change. And there's always new people coming into it, which is great, right? So there's like this healthy bloodline, and it became evident relatively early on as a person who's just been a fan of cycling since I was basically born. It was obvious that there's people entering the sport that have no sense for where it came from, where it's been, like the dropper post, the dropper, everyone has a dropper post on their bike these days. That was invented back in the 80s and then got ignored for like 20 years. Then all of a sudden, technology caught up to making it truly a viable product. Like we want to honor through the dedication role of each event. We want to honor people that have had a lasting impact on cycling, on mountain biking in particular. And so that's why we dedicate the events to individuals or groups. The Whiskey Off-Road, we dedicated it to Arizona Cycling League the first year that they launched, to bring awareness to them, and did some fundraising for them to help get them off the ground, to contribute to that effort that a lot of people contributed to, right? But given that so many Arizona mountain bikers come to the event, it was a great platform to introduce the Arizona Cycling League, you know? So, and then we've honored world champions and innovators over the years through each of the events to give the attendees and our sort of sphere that is part of our community context for where we've been in comparison to where we are, so that there's an appreciation for our history.
Awesome. Well, I agree with you. Gabriel was definitely somebody who was going places, and even now that he's no longer with us, the dedication that you did for him has caused a lot of people to learn a little bit more about him and who he was as an individual. And, you know, from what I hear, he was the first person to show up and set up his team tent and the last to leave, despite, you know, being a racer as well. And so it just really goes to show what we strive to produce with mountain bikers is people who, you know, give back to the race. Now, there's also a lot going on the event weekend beyond the race itself. So maybe walk through, you know, the expo, the concert, the fundraising, and even the opportunity to watch the pros. So they're racing, but the rest of us are spectators.
So the weekend from a spectator's perspective?
Yeah, all the different things that are available, even if you're not into biking, right? Like the concert.
Yeah, so a big objective is to grow mountain biking. Like at the end of the day, that's my goal, right? I'm the Pied Piper of mountain biking. I want more people to ride their bike. I'll settle for any bike, but I'd love it if it was a mountain bike. And so the Whiskey Off-Road Weekend was generally, it's motivated by getting more people to create positive associations with cyclists, to be exposed to mountain biking and mountain bikers. I'm biased, but I also think I'm pretty confident in being close to correct here. Mountain bikers of all the subsets of cyclists and cardio athletes are the coolest. They just are. Like, I say that, like, it sounds really biased, but I'm legitimately, I believe this.
I would agree.
They're a laid back type A. We're all kind of type A, right? We all want to go out and accomplish something, and that's cool. And it's, you know, there's a lot of life driving motivation that falls into that, but we're also the most laid back bunch. It's just you know, like most mountain bikers that, you know, win or finish on the podium will be the last person to tell you how well they did. Right. And that speaks to their character. They're just happy to hear that everybody's having a good time. And so the more people we can get to show up to an event, the more they might be turned on to the sport, or at least think positively towards it. And so as a spectator, we want to give them a reason to show up. So there's a big industry expo. It's free. It's all weekend, all 3 days. Anyone that's just curious and wants to see the latest wares from the sport, the industry, they can show up and walk up and down Whiskey Row and interact with brands like Shimano and Orange Seal that makes the sealant that goes in your tire that prevents it from flatting, which most people don't realize if they're not a mountain biker that exists. And you don't have to get flat tires all the time anymore, right? Thanks to people like Orange Seal. And, you know, like I mentioned, Never Second and their nutrition, you can sample their stuff. You can try it and see if you like it or not. And there's a whole variety. I mean, there's probably roughly 50 plus vendors each year that are set up. Some of them are community nonprofits and some of them are industry, and mostly everything in between that. We try to keep it to the bike industry. But it's a free and fun way to hang out for the weekend. You can watch the starts and the finishes. They're very inspiring. The starts are, you know, we do wave starts for the big groups, and they're like 300+ riders. It's a very powerful thing to see happen, to see that many helmets roll out, that many smiles, that many people in anticipation. I'm not sure what they're about to experience, right? And then we've got the Fat Tire Crit. So the pro category has 2 stages. They have their Fat Tire Crit on Friday night, which is super spectator friendly, high energy. Beer gardens, parties along the route. There's just people all over the place screaming and cheering. And there's this monster hill climb in it called the Union Street Climb that is just brutal. It's, you know, probably 100 feet and 0.2 of a mile or something like that. And so tremendous amounts of suffering to witness. And it's 20 minutes plus 3 laps. So it's very short and very fast. That's Friday evening. And then Saturday, there's free live music all day on the square. So there's a free concert that we give out to the whole community. That happens, of course, through support from the city of Prescott. There are our steadfast supporter of the event and you know, partner in some ways. They're heavily invested in it as a stakeholder. So free music all day with a headliner Saturday night. and of course a beer garden operated by the Prescott Unified School District Education Foundation that receives all the proceeds from it. And then Sunday morning is the pro race. And so anyone that's a spectator and curious, a great time to go out on course, watch the starts and then find their way out on the course and watch the mountain bikers come whizzing by on the trails and watch them navigate terrain at a pro level is a pretty cool thing to witness. And then we wrap up the weekend with the awards on Sunday afternoon.
And I think Sunday is the kids ride as well.
Yeah, of course. The Shimano Kids Ride. This kids ride course is, in my opinion, one of the greatest kids courses ever for mountain biking, right? There's lots of cool bike events out there that have kids events and courses associated with them. El Tour de Tucson in Tucson has a great kids ride route. But this one, because it's mountain biking, the kids get to start and finish under the main start-finish arch that all the adults go under in the pros and roll out from that chute, which is just, I think, really inspiring for them to sit and watch all the other people, that oftentimes their parents start and finish throughout the weekend and then have that same opportunity is neat. But I think the real cherry on the icing on the cake, so to speak, is the Prescott Creek Trail. To ride onto the Creek Trail, it's like a really wide single track, so it's very safe, but it feels like single track to them, right? And they get to be mountain bikers. They descend down to Granite Creek Park. There's a pump track at the park. They hang out down there in an aid station, get to refuel just like everybody else, and then ride back up the Granite Creek Trail up to downtown and finish on Whiskey Row. And there's a podium to take a picture in front of a banner, and it's like a neat over the top experience that they get a medallion from Shimano. It's neat. It's a fun way to share an experience like that with kids.
Love how you parallel it with the pros start, because now all these spectators besides their family are already down there and cheering them on. And for people who aren't familiar with that Granite Creek Trail, there's a lot of really fun beelines on that trail that, depending on the child's skill set, they can have a lot of fun. And those of us who are, children trapped in an adult's body, I've seen the police officers that you have escort everybody along take some pretty decent jumps off of those beelines, despite all this equipment on their bike and a gun on their belt and that sort of thing. And I was kind of chat with them about it, and they said, hey, we're here to have fun as well. And so it's so awesome to see them do that, and then the kids follow right behind it. So going back to the pros just really briefly, that's a technical category at nearly every race. But for the Whiskey Off-Road, these are some of the fastest, if not the fastest, mountain bikers in the world. How do you attract them to the race and keep it interesting for them? Because I know most of them come back on a repeat basis as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So the pro category has a sizable cash purse. It's $34,000 these days. 30,000 on the backcountry, and then 4,000 sprinkled over the Fat Tire Crit, and a little bit on a preem in the backcountry race as well. It's funny. I was talking to one of the premier pro racers just a few months ago, and he said it's pretty easy to get us to show up to an event. He said, just pay us. So yeah, but we have a big cash purse. And when we launched the purse in 2010 or 2011, one, it was important to us that it was equal from the beginning. So it's always been a parity purse, equal payout for the men and the women. We pay 12 deep, which means that not just, it goes back to that second through last philosophy. 12 deep is more than just top 5, top 3, which is often common in this space. And it's a secure purse. So, there's a lot of purses these days. Times have changed. We were the first ones to launch a meaningful purse like that. And that's how we really made a mark early. We put out such a big cash purse the first year that it got everyone's attention, and that led to building a healthy pro category. On top of that, some of those things that I mentioned, like the equality, as well as a secure purse, we're promoting a $34,000 purse that is going to be given away one way or another. There, for a long time, even today, if you look close enough, there's a lot of events out there that A, don't disclose details about their purse and leaves it very loosely interpreted when it comes time to pay. Or B, will say things like, hey, it's $100,000 in cash and prizes, and it's $90,000 in prizes and $10,000 in cash. Or C, they'll say, we're going to pay out $50,000, and then the fine print says, if we get this number of people to show up. And so then, of course, that number of people doesn't show up and they don't pay out 50,000. So we saw an opportunity to basically operate on a accountable level and to go out and secure the money and give away the money in a way that was very transparent so that everyone could reliably have an experience. And we set out to up-level the pro category. And in a lot of ways, I think we accomplished that. And a lot of other events have now entered the fold, and a lot of events with purses have entered the fold, which makes it more competition for us. But on the same note, is good for the industry and it's good for pros. And the aha moment was a friend of mine was America's fastest female pro racer globally. She went to an event, one of America's greatest mountain bike events. I won't name names. And she did an omnium of racing. It was 3 different races for the weekend. She got second or third place that weekend overall. And I said, congratulations, what'd you get? She said, I got a check for $82 and a Casio watch. And I thought, this is a person that could have easily gone into biosciences, has her master's, is super intelligent, committed to bike racing, represents America on the global level, is the fastest female mountain biker in the world, and they gave her a check for $82. Yeah. What in the world is going on? So that's how those things came to be. That's why. Yeah.
I love it. That same coach of our youth team that I mentioned earlier, Aaron Osborne, has loved showing the youth that big check that she rightfully earns at the race. I always remind our youth that she started in the amateur category, right? She did the amateur 50 in 2018, and then got to 19th place in the pro category that next year, and then was on the podium in 2023 and forward. So it's just awesome to see some of the transition as well from that amateur category. Nobody should expect that to be happening from me, but it's wonderful to see with some of the people I know. So talking about next year, it'll be, I think, the 21st running of the event. Is that right? So any special plans for the big birthday?
Look, an event called the Whiskey Off-Road turning 21 has to be monumental. It's a milestone, just like it is for any human. There's also responsibility that comes with that. So yeah, we're gonna lean into that. Let's see what we can come up with.
Okay, awesome. So I just have a few sort of lightning round questions for you to end with. First bike you ever owned?
First bike or first mountain bike? I'm going to enter first mountain
your
bike.
Your choice.
Trek 930, Quad 20 fork. RockShox Quad 20, I think is what it was.
How many bikes do you currently own versus how many bikes does your wife think you own?
That's really funny. I've always, so there was a time in life where I had like 10 or 12 bikes, and I had this like epiphany. I was like, I can't ride them all at once. What am I doing? I have 3 bikes. I have an amazing road bike, a Factor 02 VAM road bike, shiny beepity bop bits on it. I've got a Santa Cruz Tallboy mountain bike with beep bop components on it. And speaking of, have you seen Shimano's new drivetrain they just launched? The new XTR?
My son's working at a bike shop now, so I get all the beta.
Hey. Okay. If people looked closely, they might have seen that at the whiskey a few months ago.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Anyways, and then I've got a Specialized Globe LT for commuting that I love picking my kids up from school on, and most of the time they love it too.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Speaking of that drivetrain and the bike expo and different stuff, it has been really fun to talk with the pros or observe the pros and then talk directly with the manufacturers at the bike expo and get some really interesting information on what's coming up in mountain biking, et cetera. Do you have a favorite trail from the whiskey course? And it can be from any year.
Oh, 260%.
Awesome.
Yeah. That thing's so burly. I'll never forget in the early years of disc brakes. Like, think about it. disc brakes weren't around in the beginning of the Whiskey Off-Road. But in the early years, I remember a buddy bombed down that thing. It's so steep and so burly at times. He warped his rotors. It's how hot they got.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just such a invigorating descent.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember this, but a couple years ago when I was going to do some drone work out there, I told you that for me to get out there and be set up in time and not kill myself, I'd have to stay the night. I'd have to bike pack out there because I wasn't comfortable, getting out there early enough because of that gnarly descent. What about one word to best describe being a race organizer these days?
Controlled chaos.
What was that?
It's 2 words. Controlled
chaos. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not a rigid thing. You got to be able to embrace all the variables. Like live events, mountain bike race organizer, live events in general. It's controlled chaos. Like you put the bumpers out there and then you get ready just in case something gets outside the bumper, and you rely heavily on the attendees, the people you want to seed the behavior of a good time so that everyone just has a good time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's excellent. I've watched you during some of that chaos, and you're one of the calmest demeanors I've ever seen. And I reference that race organization story with the people I coach because stuff's going to come up, right? Whether you're the rider or the organizer, and there's the things you can control and the things you can't, and just maintaining that calm demeanor and focusing on the things that you can control and embracing the issues that come up. And so when I've had students, for example, with, a bike problem, or like you say, maybe they didn't sleep great that day, I've actually told them stories about, hey, we had an issue with the course, right? But we adapted and it's still going to be a great time. And, our suggestion is that all the riders do the same as well. So I think it's good for everybody to understand or level set that nothing's perfect for any of the riders or even the organizers of that race. So maybe in closing, can you give a little bit of information about the date of the 2026 Whiskey, where people can sign up, that sort of thing?
So first, thanks. Thanks for this opportunity. Thanks for saying I look calm. It's because I have an amazing team. It's because we're 20 years deep, right? So not just my production team that I work with and operate with from event to event, but also those volunteers that we talked about earlier. Everybody knows what this thing looks and smells like. And it allows us to keep creating a bigger, better experience every year. So thanks. Thanks for, it's important to also acknowledge all the people that go into me appearing calm. So registration will open Black Friday. We do a discounted registration for Black Friday. If you're local, we do a discounted registration night in Prescott, usually within the week of opening general registration. And registration information, event information in general, all the course maps are at epicrides.com. Click on the Whiskey Off-Road. Get all the information you can handle. Follow us at Epic Rides and at Whiskey Off-Road on the Facebooks and the Instagrams. And tag us, and we're glad to share your journey with our audience as well. I got a funny story. It's actually not the Whiskey Off-Road, it's the Tour of the White Mountains, but it's too good not to share. And I guess I just want to use it to set the tone. There was a guy going home from work on Friday. He's an electrician. I know because we ended up working with his wife. She handled our social media for that event for a while. Super cool couple, great people, really great humans. And he was driving home from work, and he passed the venue for the Tour of the White Mountains. And there's a ton of mountain bikers hanging out, drinking beer or otherwise, listening to music, getting ready for the event the next day. And he saw it. He drives by it every, all the time on his way to and from work. And he was like, what is going on there? So he stops, he turns around, he goes back, and he's like, what is this? And someone says, hey, this is the Tour of the White Mountains. It's a mountain bike event, blah, blah, blah. He goes home and he's like, spouse, I just saw a mountain bike event. It was a ton of people hanging out, having beverages, and gonna go mountain biking. He's like, I want to become a mountain biker. That literally, that interaction led to him then becoming a mountain biker. He's ridden all the distances of the whiskey. He's ridden multiple times at the 24 Hours Noble Pueblo, rides the tour every year. He's a guy in a costume at the Le Mans start of the 24-hour race. Like, he went from, well, this just looks like my vibe, to like instantly becoming part of the community. And mountain biking it's part of their whole family's life. They have kids, the kids ride now. Like, it's the cutest, greatest thing ever. And I think
that's awesome. I had a similar story told to me about the whiskey. I had a student that was going to sign up for a team, and I was kind of asking her what she knew about mountain biking, and she said, not very much, but I live by the whiskey course and I see those people, riding. And by the way, she lives by Copper Basin Road, a big climb, right? And she said something effective. They look like they're having a great time. And flash forward 3 years, she just rode the 15 this year. And so I just wanted to add on, to anybody thinking about as Todd mentioned, it's a challenging course, but it's something that anybody should be able to set a goal on and achieve that goal. I've seen young children do it. I've seen the opposite end of the age spectrum do it. I've seen, parent-child combos, including myself. I stood shoulder to shoulder on like the second row of the fast pass in the very beginning of the 25 proof this past year. And my goal was to see how long I could stay reasonably close to my son. And it depends on your definition of reasonably close. He had a very high contrast jersey on, which helped me see him from a distance. So I tell people that he didn't leave my sight until I think that turn up to Mount Francis. Now, my sight was from a distance, but it's a really awesome opportunity to do it either solo or with a friend. And Todd, I want to thank you not only for the time that you've given me today, but it's been really awesome for me to watch the past 8 years that I've lived here, the impact that you and your team have had on the community, as well as learn some of the history about the organizations like the Arizona Cycling Association and Prescott Mountain Bike Alliance that, were sort of built in parallel to this event, right? They're good catalysts for each other. One helps the other. And I don't know if any of them would have been as successful without that partnership. So truly appreciate everything that you've done for the community as well.
Thanks. It's a synergistic thing. It's a sum of the, a sum of the parts, right? We're all, that's what makes it special and great, is that it keeps working because we all keep working well together. We all want to find victories for each other and together. The moment that PIMBA, the moment the community said, hey, maybe we should have an IMBA chapter, right? We supported it. And then together we've played together really well. The moment PIMBA said we want to do a trail system in Spence Basin, Emmanuel Pines at the time, we said, great, let's raise funds. We'll do it through the event. And mind you, we didn't raise all the funds, but it becomes a decent sized number and it contributes to the outcome. Same thing with Bean Peaks. We just did our second year of fundraising for that. I think we're probably approaching close to $80,000-$90,000 from just the Whiskey Off-Road fundraisers for Bean Peaks at this point. Like, by the third phase, we should go north of $100,000 raised for that thing. And it's great. It's great.
For those of you who don't know what Bean Peaks is, so here in Prescott, we just finished the second phase of a pretty unique project in the Forest Service land, downhill only, bike optimized, bike only trails with a variety of features ranging from a green trail where a less experienced person can bomb down that fairly quickly with confidence, while several beelines, challenge their friends. And some of those beelines are my favorite aspects of the trail, to, tables and doubles and that sort of thing. So that's one of the many things that the event has not only helped fundraise, but the more exposure you provide in your marketing to people for that, the more that helps with the grassroots fundraising as well. So I will encourage everybody to register as early as possible for the whiskey race, because the categories do sell out. And I can't speak for everybody, but I know that everybody I knew that raced last year is already planning to improve, register for next year and work on that, time improvement, or maybe riding the rock roller that they had to roll, or that sort of thing. And we've also, tricked, with air quotes, a few of the parents into giving it a try as well. So,
Nice.
all right. Thanks again, Todd. I really appreciate it.
Likewise. Thanks, Scott. This was fun.